Hey there, magical experimenters. Taylor Ellwood here. And if you're new to the channel, please go ahead and click that subscribe button and click the notification bell, so you get the videos, and then like and comment on my videos if you've been around for a while or not. Whatever floats your boat, right? So I'm about to shoot some videos tonight. I'm comfortable in my loungewear here. And I decided to talk a bit about foundational magic and how to build a foundation in magic in your life, because I'm very much in the process of rebuilding my life, right? So I think it's kind of appropriate. And I've built a foundation in my magical life a number of times anyway. I mean, my daily practice has switched from doing, Taoist meditation practices to Dogen meditation practices to some visualizations and neo-shamanic hermetic practices to going back to Taoist practices to sphere of art and other stuff. Hey, Astarte, how you doing there? And it's one of those cases where over the years I've changed different practices at different times in order to reshuffle the foundation. But if I'm really like, when you want to rebuild the foundation of your life, the foundation of magical work, it necessarily requires that you're willing to examine what doesn't work in order to discover what does work. Why do we start with what doesn't work? Well, we start with what doesn't work because when we understand what doesn't work, then we can readily appreciate the flaws, the cracks in the foundation, and we can start making changes to address those cracks. The cracks in a foundation are the things that weaken it. It's like doing magical work where you're trying to work with the spirit and the spirit doesn't want to work with you. That's a crack in your foundation right there. Why are you continuing to do that work? Or it's like when you make a mistake in a situation, that becomes a crack, and you either find some way to address it and resolve it, or you let it become wider and wider and destroy or create at least a faulty foundation. I prefer addressing it and resolving it myself, because when you don't, it makes life sad. So, how do we address our foundations? Well, we start looking at the stability that we have in our lives. And really, if you want to have magical stability, you have to have mundane stability first. Now, a lot of magicians don't want to hear that, but it's true. Like, if you don't take care of the foundation on the mundane level, you're probably not going to have a lot of room for the magical level. There's a reason why the people who can do a lot of magical work are generally more stable, because they've taken the time. Well, not all of them are stable. I should say I know a fair number of unstable magicians and stuff. Oh, I've been an unstable magician at times. No, what I mean, though, is that the people who can really engage in spiritual work, if they have a broad foundation in place to support that, it can make a difference. So what does that foundation look like? Well, financially, it could look like having a job or bringing in enough money for your business, or a combination of all of the above and other things that allows you to support a specific lifestyle, right? But we don't want to just limit ourselves to financial well-being. I always say, look at your physical well-being. Like, what are you doing to take care of your body? For example, are you exercising every day? Are you eating the right kind of food? Are you trying to take care of yourself in a way that is healthy instead of just, putting yourself through the ropes? These things matter. How are you showing up in the friendships and the relationships in your life? Oh, so Astarte says, I'm relatively new and I find that I'm already challenged to address the cracks in my foundation. Well, you know what, Astarte, you're lucky in a way, because you're doing it now. You're doing it while you're relatively new. I mean, some people wait for years and years before doing it, if ever. And a lot of people go through life never addressing the cracks in their foundation until it becomes an addictive habit or something along those lines. If you get the and here's the rub with all that. You can still address that stuff and still find additional cracks down the line. Like, just, you're never going to have your life all together, no matter how much you try to. I don't say that to burst your bubble, Astarte, or anyone else's here. I just say it because, I mean, the fact of the matter is there's going to be moments when you think you've got your life together and then things will fall apart. There's a great book by Pema Chodron, which is called When Things Fall Apart, and it's all about that. And I mean, I can speak to that myself. I mean, a little over a year ago, I thought I had everything set up nicely. Was going to, finally have a really sweet situation. And then things fell apart. And I discovered some real deep cracks in the foundation. And I had to start working on those cracks. And I got some of them resolved, and some of them just ended up being too big and too deep, and life fell apart. And that's okay. I mean, and this is someone who's quote unquote considered to be aware, whatever that means. I have that. I think it's funny when people say that to me. Oh, you're so aware. Uh-huh. Yeah. And what price do you think that awareness came at? What does that really even mean? And what does it mean to be aware? Like, what happens when a person who quote unquote is aware tries to show up in a very specific way? Exactly. We all have our blind spots, Astarte. We all have our blind spots. That's why I don't put a lot of faith in that word aware. Because I think, like, well, I'm aware in certain ways, and in other ways I have blind spots, and I have to discover those blind spots at some point or another. And if I don't, well, then I'll discover them the hard way. Something will come up. There will be a crack in the foundation. Something will be discovered. Oh, time to address it. Sometimes the only way we discover our cracks in the foundation is when we make a mistake. Sometimes the only way we see our blind spots is when we discover, through our own selfishness or other things, the very things that we need to address and work on. And I don't say that to advocate that it's okay to be selfish or anything like that, because I really think, a person should try and do their best not to be a selfish asshole, if it can be helped. But I think sometimes, that you learn the hard way. And I will be, as a person who's learned life the hard way, who's gone through the school of hard knocks a number of times, I can definitely tell you that like, as an example, that quote unquote awareness that I sometimes hear about, like, that came about because of the mistakes that I made. That came about because of the cracks in the foundation I discovered. That came about because, I was forced to see myself in a different light and be like, well, okay, if I'm showing up this way, that's a real problem, and I got to do something about it. That kind of awareness doesn't happen like overnight. It doesn't happen without some real willingness to do the work. Some real willingness to face the music, some real willingness to hold yourself accountable and responsible for the things that you do, both good and bad. I think it's interesting, really, because, I don't see the words accountability and responsibility thrown around too much in magical work. I think a lot of people don't necessarily really think about it, because, it's like, oh, hey, I can do magic to get a solution to my problems. I can do this or I can do that. And yes, sometimes magic can solve your problems, but at the end of the day, like, if you're really going deep with your magical work, at some point you're going to come face to face with the aspects of yourself that you don't like, and you're going to have to make a decision, like, how do you address that? I feel like for me, this entire last year has been about really seeing me in, like, not the most flattering light, like really seeing myself in a way that, like, really has revealed a lot of my fallibilities and weaknesses. And I've been able to, I've had the blind spots stripped off. I'm sure I still have some blind spots. In fact, I know I do. But it's like when you see who you are like really who you are, and not like who you see who you are in the way like where people are like, oh, you're such an amazing person or whatever. No, like I mean, you really see yourself. You have to learn to hold yourself accountable and responsible for the way that for the way things happen in your life that you're responsible for. I mean, you're not responsible for everything. And then, there has to be some grace there as well. I mean, I say that because I think a lot of times people don't give each other or themselves the necessary grace that they need to. I'm certainly guilty of that. I would say that I am the hardest person on myself in my life. You know, in fact, like if I've done something, I will probably hold myself accountable in a way that kind of goes above and beyond in some ways. And it may seem a little like over the top, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, like when do you hold yourself responsible? When do you take accountability? When do you really, because other people can hold you accountable for things that you've done. And I mean, I've had that happen sometimes. I've had people tell me, I had someone who was a dear friend tell me what a narcissist I was, apparently, according to him. So far as I know, I'm not a narcissist. I've read up enough on it that I don't think that fits the bill. But I got that in some cases he was projecting his own issues onto me. But it was a hard thing to sit with and be with. And in the end, I lost that friendship. And a lot of that was on me. I mean, some things that I said and did, and some of it was on him. And I mean, so it goes. But, you can be held responsible by other people, but you don't really take on true responsibility until you yourself are willing to take on that responsibility. Like in my case, I can tell you that kind of responsibility has not happened easily all the time. I mean, but it's something where when I do take it on, I take it on because it's like, well, that is my responsibility. Like I can't expect somebody else to fix the problem, especially if I've caused the problem. I can't expect someone else to address the issue if the issue originates from me. I mean, I can, but I think at the end of the day, like and who has that responsibility? And it's one of the questions I think about, like with magical work as well. Like, who has the responsibility for the magical work? Well, if I'm doing magical work, I have responsibility for the consequences and the fallout and all the other things that come with it. You say, well, why do you hold yourself so responsible, Taylor? Well, because if I don't, who else will? Right? Who else will hold me responsible? Like, really? And I think that a lot of times people get this notion that, magic can be like this guilt-free, consequence-free kind of thing. And I would disagree with that. I mean, my own experiences speak to the fact that, like, in doing the work that I've done, I mean, I've definitely seen the real weight and impact of magical work. And while I can say that in general it's been good, there have been times where I've been like, wow, this was a heavy price. Tonight I was at a concert listening to a couple friends of mine, finally hearing them play their music. It was really good music too. And I got to thinking about when I met those people, and I met those people around the beginning of my second marriage. And of course, I ended up feeling a bit sad. I was thinking about my ex-wife and everything that happened, and just thinking about, like, how did I show up in that marriage, that relationship? I mean, I can't say like I'm wholly responsible for why things went the way they went, nor will I. I don't think that's fair to myself, but I can't also deny that I had some responsibility. And that's true with the first marriage. That's true with any relationship. I mean, it's true with friendships. It's true with the relationship you have with yourself. Like how you show up in your own life. Like, who's that on? It's you. And I think, like, if you want to build a foundation as best as possible, you want to have a few cracks in it. You want to do it right. And if you catch a crack in the making and you can address it and resolve it, then you do that. You do it because it's the right freaking thing to do. You hold yourself responsible and accountable because when you don't, the consequences aren't worth it in my experience, right? Now sometimes how you hold yourself responsible is you say, well, I'm not I'm denying myself in a fundamental way, right? Like, and that could be true. Like if you're not being true and honest with yourself, that's certainly a factor. But sometimes you look at it and you say, well, I'm not showing up in a way that's healthy or good for the other person involved, or the other people. Do I stay or do I go, or do I try to address this? How do I deal with this? And these things are not, there are no easy answers here. And the easy answer that a person might be tempted to go with, which is just like, well, okay, it's already happened, and whatever. Like that isn't an answer to me. It's not an answer in my magical work. It's not an answer in the way I want to show up in life. It's like, no, if things are not right, then we have to address those things. We have to address what is wrong in a way that is fair and equitable to all involved. And I don't know. I mean, I think that people like I think I think that what I find is that a lot of times people will either shortchange themselves or they'll shortchange other people. And speaking as somebody who has sometimes been shortchanged and sometimes has shortchanged other people, the further along I get in my life, the more I don't want to do that. The more I want to be fair and equitable to the people in my life, the more that I want to really consider their perspective and side of things. Because if I don't do that, how can I possibly live with myself? And let me tell you something. When you have lived a year of your life, and it's been the hardest year of your life because you have really come up close and seen your cracks and your faults and all the things that you've screwed up and messed up. Like you don't want to be that way ever again. And of course, I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but making a mistake doesn't justify the behavior, right? It's not like, oh, well, you can just wipe that away. No, I mean, you got to take responsibility for it. You have to be accountable. Lack of accountability is what creates problems in life, whether it's the lack of accountability with yourself or the lack of accountability with other people or lack of accountability in other ways. So I think like when we build a foundation, we have to build accountability into that foundation. We have to build a real sense of recognition. Like, what am I building here? And if we catch a crack in there, we catch a mistake, we catch something, then like how do we address that? Like if we can address it, sooner than later and deal with it and resolve it, then that's a good thing to do. That's good in your magical practice. Like, let's say you're doing a magical practice and you realize that something isn't quite right. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep doing that practice? Or are you going to say, reflect on it and say, like maybe I need to change things up a bit. Maybe I need to take care of myself in a different way and show up in a different way than I would otherwise. These are the things that I think more people need to think about and don't think about often enough. And I guess it's kind of funny, like, I don't know. Look, I'm not a perfect person by any means. And I think it's funny sometimes when people talk to me because they've seen my videos or whatever, or they meet me and they kind of like have, I don't know, this notion of who I am. And I'm not saying that notion isn't somewhat true. It is. I mean, I try to be authentic and show up here in a way that, like, warts and all. I was reading one of my magical journals. My My old departed mentor, writing mentor, Storm Constantine, wrote it. In fact, I'm gonna go get it. So just stay there, Astarte. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Okay, and you, whoever else came, you stay there too. So my friend Storm. Okay, at least you're there, Astarte. Huh. You're in it for the long run. My friend Storm, she's dead now, sad to say. She wrote this introduction in A Magical Life. This is the old version, but you can get it in print. And I don't know, she said something in here. And I want to read it to you guys. I want to read it to you because it's interesting to read this perspective. And I miss Storm. I miss her a lot. I kind of didn't part ways with her in the best way that I would have liked. And that kind of strikes me as sad. But I want to read this to you. It's going to be so it's reading time, folks. When I first met Taylor Ellwood over a decade ago, something we regularly discussed, and with some impatience, I will admit, was the idea of armchair occultists. All too often, and especially online, you come across those who like to talk about magic and frequently in quite critical terms concerning other people and their practices, yet who themselves don't actually do much hands-on work. Both Taylor and I deplored this trend. It isn't authentic magic and can at worst give magic and its practitioners a bad name. As part of my own magical training, I was introduced by my teachers to the concept of metanoia, deriving from the Greek metatonin, meaning change of mind. If you look in the dictionary, you'll find that the literal meaning of metanoia is a change in one's way of life resulting from penitence or spiritual conversion. But my teachers regarded the concept somewhat differently. In a subtle way, the word retained its original meaning in that spiritual conversion was viewed as an opening up to spirituality and freedom therein in one's life rather than converting to a dogmatic religion, and penitence as genuine humbleness in the face of the wonders of the universe. I was taught to understand that while we are precious and unique as individuals, we are also connected to everything around us, seen and unseen, and that these connections should be felt and understood. My teachers believed that in order to learn and to evolve, the student must undergo an awakening process, that valuable change of mind. It's like seeing the world with eyes that were previously blurred by cataracts, a true seeing. My mentors taught me that knowledge should be equal to experience and that one without the other was useless. Many armchair occultists are of the knowledge rather than experience strain, and you'll find more of Taylor's opinions about this phenomenon within the pages of this book. But more importantly, you'll see some of the unfolding of Taylor's own metanoia. It's an ongoing process that takes a lifetime, but here's a snapshot of it during a few years of the author's life. There are lots of books on magic available nowadays, many of them important readings, but if you want a glimpse into the ongoing magical life of a dedicated practitioner, you hold it in your hands. All too often, those involved in magic become obsessed with its outer trappings, when really the work begins and mostly continues within. It cannot be seen, and in many cases, it can't even be shared. The awakening of awareness is often a painful and lonely experience, as part of which we face and conquer our inner demons. But without it, metanoia cannot take place. True magicians undertake these lone journeys in order to grow, to expand their consciousness, to be self-aware. There's that awareness word again, right? But she's right. She really is right. You have to face your inner demons. You have to face your faults and your weaknesses and your fallibilities. Anyway, I'm going to continue on. These undertakings are the balancing of knowledge with experience, gaining the first through practicing the latter. And like anyone advancing a new craft, mistakes are made and the practitioner learns through trial and error. No one else's words on their journey can ensure you replicate their successes. Your journey is your own and will differ from anyone else's, even while other people's reports can be supportive and helpful in that sense. In A Magical Life, it's as if Taylor took out an immense yet vaguely sketched map of his inner universe. Vaguely sketched because some of it had yet to be mapped. In some areas were warnings, here be dragons. But in true adventurer style, Taylor set forth to begin mapping those lands and to confront the dragons. Some of them might turn out to be wise and of help, others might have to be defeated. This book isn't always easy reading because often Taylor's path becomes stony, and he does not shrink from sharing this. He explored uncharted caverns of being and now and again became lost in the darkness, but the light of his will and his integrity and also his determination to learn led him onwards. As well as being a blisteringly honest and personal account of his 3 consecutive year-long magical workings into the elements of love, emptiness, and time, the journal entries also reveal much of Taylor's philosophy about magic and its practice. Words that cannot fail to inspire new travelers upon the path. Hey, thanks, Storm. There's also plenty for the veteran practitioner to learn from, as I did myself. At the very least, you'll find stimulating ideas that will spur you on to exercise your own imagination in a magical sense. While some readers might find Taylor's opinions on various idols of modern Western occultism somewhat iconoclastic, even the most disapproving won't be able to deny that his words ring true on these matters. He never seeks to claim his is the only and true way, but simply his way. Take or leave what you want of it as you choose. And yeah, that really is pretty much my way of doing things. This is to my mind the best way for everyone involved in magic. Don't take others' words as gospel. Use your mind, your imagination, your intuition, and find your own way. Other people can be marvelous guides, but they can't do all the work for you. The only way to become a magician is to do magic, not just read about it or talk about it. It's also important to realize that magic isn't just an external experience involving rituals, spells, and sigils. It's a way of life that informs all that you do from day to day. Taylor delivers this message in abundance. He also encourages magical practitioners to be adventurous, experimental, and above all, creative. Also, that we should be kind to ourselves even when we make mistakes. That annoyance shouldn't just be regarded as a daunting or perhaps even frightening process, and it can be those things, but also as an exciting roller coaster ride during which all kinds of wonders are revealed to you. The more you exercise creativity, the more exciting and colorful the journey becomes. She's right. I will add that anyone who comes into my life is inevitably in for lots of creativity. Take it or leave it. A Magical Life is primarily a journal, more or less untouched from how Taylor penned it, as he underwent the experiences he described. For the sake of clarity, the text inevitably had to be tidied up to a degree, but as its editor, I strove to allow the strong voice to deliver its message as it was first uttered. Taylor's thoughts, impressions as they emerged each time he made an entry in his journal, free from posturing or caring about image, just the naked truth as he experienced it. Few magicians would feel comfortable being this honest about all aspects of their personalities, warts and all, and far fewer would be brave enough to share it in this way. But for the serious practitioner, I believe this book is vital reading. It shows the life of magic, that it isn't just a colorful garment we put on when we feel like it, but an integral part of our being woven into every aspect of our lives. It demonstrates the wonder of magic and how its practice can help shape us into more evolved beings. Ultimately, it's the charting of a journey, and like all such tales, is full of adventure and surprises. Well, that was nice of her, and I appreciate it. And that's really the thing. Like, if you want to build a foundation, you have to be genuine. You have to be real with yourself and with other people. You have to take accountability and responsibility. Not just for what's convenient for you, not just for what's easy, but for the things that are hard. And that's how I choose to live my life. Like, if you were to read my journal entries from 2008 to 2010, you would find that at least in that the person I was. Yeah, exactly, Astarte. If you don't, you can't be honest with yourself. And yet so many people aren't honest with themselves. And I can't say that I've always been honest with myself. I mean, I'm just gonna call it out. Like, I haven't. Sometimes I have failed miserably at that. But I think, like, if we're really going to live a magical life, it means that we have to live it with integrity. We have to show up. When Storm wrote that so long ago, I was honored when I read it. I mean, I really appreciated it, and it spoke to the fact that we had this real connection, and it is, like I said, it's sad to me that connection eventually withered away. It just went the way it did. I went down a different path. And there were reasons for that, but I still appreciate her. I miss her wherever she is in the afterlife. And someday, I'll be gone myself, and other people will say good or bad things or whatever else about me, and so it goes. But the thing is like, at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. Okay. And I don't know. I see a lot of people who don't live with themselves very well. Like they put up with things they shouldn't put up with. They they seek comfort and ease instead of being willing to confront the discomfort in their lives. And that's not who I am. Like that's not how you build a foundation, not a real one with your magical work or with your life. You have to be willing to hold yourself accountable. You have to own the moments where you fail in order to shine in the moments where you succeed. And this requires a kind of integrity, a kind of ruthless integrity in a way. And that's a harsh word to put there, but I'm going to use it. Ruthless integrity. Like that when you catch yourself or when you are called out, that you hold yourself. Yes, yes. Lucifer shines his light on the things that you need to address and change. Well, that's just it. Like when you know, and it's funny to me because, people think of Lucifer, like, as a light bringer. Sometimes they think of Lucifer as being all about indulgence and sex and other things like that. And rebellion. But like, let's really consider that concept of rebellion. Like, what does it mean to rebel? What does it mean to show up a certain way? What does it mean to hold yourself accountable? It means that you shine the light on yourself, or that when it's shown on you, you see the cracks in your foundation, that you hold yourself accountable to it. And that you do your best to live a better life as a result. My awareness, such as it is, and I mean, Storm talked about it in there, and as I said, other people have said, like, you're so aware. My awareness does not come without a price. And that's true with any magical work. Like if you're willing to really do it, it doesn't come without being willing to, when you're really serious about it, when you live it as a lifestyle. And I'm not just talking about getting a result for something, but I'm like really talking about living it. You don't get that without being willing to take on that responsibility and accountability. And that's really the way I choose to show up in my life. It's the way I choose to do the work that I do. I would rather hold myself to the highest standard possible, and that when I'm called out or when I call myself out, that I address those things that need to be addressed so that I can firm up the cracks, so that I can do something, than to just let it continue because, well, it's convenient and easy in the moment. It is hard to face yourself. It is hard to face your weaknesses. It is hard work. It is hard work to see who you are and to recognize when you need to change and where you need to make changes. Storm wrote the Wraithu series, and at one point in the third book, the one character Cal, he comes across an old acquaintance, and he complains about how the work is hard, and the old acquaintance laughs at him. And he says, "The work is hard. The work is hard, but it's worth it." And of course, this old acquaintance has changed his life around. And Cal kind of has to come face to face with the fact that yes, it is hard. Don't seek to live a magical life if you're not willing to go where the dragons are. Don't seek a magical life if you're not willing to shine the light on yourself and to see who you are and to see the things that you need to do to address your weaknesses and your delusions and your failings. And yeah, celebrate your strengths. I've talked a lot about the things that haven't worked out so well. Really, in the last few months in particular. But I think it's because I've had to necessarily hold myself to that accountability. Like I can't, not take responsibility for my own failings. And this is why we do the work. We do the work not just to get results, not just to make our life easier, not just to do things a certain way. We do it because we not necessarily must be willing to confront who we are. If we want to become quote unquote better people, but if we want to evolve, I mean, I don't know about the better people part, but I do know that I want to evolve, right? And that my evolution isn't just about indulgence of like what I want or anything like that, because sometimes when you indulge in what you want, it can cause more harm than good to the people around you and to yourself. I mean, an alcoholic, as an example, can drink themselves to death. And I know this because I've had family members who are alcoholics, so I've seen the impact alcohol has had, and I've seen the impact that other people's choices have had on them. Just because something feels good in the moment doesn't mean it's the right thing to do or the right way to be. This is why I read up on Stoicism as an example, because Stoicism is about, and I'm trying to implement it in my life. It's this philosophy that is really about like seeing, like applying a measure of self-control, not just being a beast. It's so easy to be a beast. It's so much harder to be a human being. In Dune, Paul Atreides, he gets challenged like, is he a real human, right? And he has the Gom Jabbar stuck to his neck, and he's got to put his hand in the pain box, and like he manages to just kind of withstand that pain and to be present with it, and so he doesn't get killed. And that's kind of like what it means sometimes, that we have to be present with the pain, and that we have to be willing to see our own fallibilities and our weaknesses so that we can address those cracks in the foundation and build a magical life that is truly a good life for us. And a good life in the sense that it's not just about like, well, I want this and I want that, but like a good life in terms of like how you show up and like, what does it mean to really be a magical practitioner? What does it mean to really even be a human being? These aren't easy questions that get answered, but they're questions that are worth asking. And I would challenge any of you who watch these videos of mine and have seen the more philosophical bent in recent times to really consider this yourself. Like, I do love talking about magical work and stuff, but one of the reasons why I've become more philosophical about this stuff is that I've really experienced up close the price and the impact in the last few years. And I don't regret it. But I do recognize it, and I recognize my own role in that. And like I want to be better. It's not enough to just cruise by in life, going with the flow, going through the motions, and never taking any responsibility. At some point, you have to swim. At some point, you have to struggle. At some point, you have to be willing to go above and beyond what other people tell you and not settle for less. Not for yourself, and not with other people, and not with your spiritual practice, and not with your life. And sometimes that means doing some hard stuff. It means taking responsibility. It means showing up in a way that isn't comfortable. So it's a huge part of my practice, and it's a huge part of how I'm building my foundation right now. It's not easy work, but I feel like the measure of peace that I've gotten in my life in recent times is a direct result of that, because I've come out of my experiences with a bit of genuine self-awareness that I actually feel like it's been well and truly earned. Actually, all of my awareness has been well and truly earned, in all fairness. I mean, Storm would tell me that right now if she were here. And she basically did in the book. But really, we have to earn it. All right, that's it for tonight. That's my thoughts on building a foundation. It went philosophical and it addressed some other things, but these are things we do need to address. All right, I'm out of here. Take care. I got to shoot some other videos.